Meet Mark and Dan, sort of a modern-day Jack in the Beanstalk. They don't have magic beans, but they do have a giant idea that all stemmed from a courgette plant that wouldn't stop growing.
We were trying to swap them with other allotment holders who also had loads of courgettes. We were giving them to neighbours who were running away because they'd already had some from last week they still hadn't eaten. So we talked to the local hospice, asking if they would be welcoming any fresh food donations, and they were absolutely delighted to get them.
At first, it was just people here on Milton allotment who were growing and giving. But since Mark and Dan have put their idea on the internet, well, it's grown and grown. They've now got people from 14 different counties who are taking part in Food Share. The idea has also gone international, with allotment keepers in New Zealand, France and even New York taking part. And also the biggest area that it's really grown in is schools, with 7,500 children now growing for charity. One of the first schools on board was Milton Primary.
Are the radishes nearly ready for picking?
Tom, look at that.
Oh, they're lovely, aren't they?
Whoa!
They've now got a dedicated area growing food for terminally ill children at the village hospice. I met up with their 10 head gardeners. How much do you enjoy gardening?
A lot more than any other lesson we do.
And why do you enjoy it so much?
Because you get to get outside and see what it's like out gardening and different experience.
What have you been giving to the charity today?
Some rhubarb, some radish, a couple of lettuces, a couple of peas. It's really nice because we get to grow stuff, and then just like the look on their faces when they get like courgettes on their omelette.
It's not only teaching the children the life skills of growing, but to be able to share what they're doing has been a really wonderful experience, and everyone's absolutely loving it.
I feel a bit guilty not helping with the weeding. We probably ought to help, hadn't we?
I think we ought to.
With a healthy basket like this, they're obviously doing fine without me. They even top it up with things they've grown at home. It's then just a short walk to take it to the hospice.
We rely heavily on voluntary income for the funds that we need, and obviously a cost of that is providing meals when they come and stay at the hospice. Taking that cost away by having food donated by the local community is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
More than 100 charities now receive help. It's been a real fairy tale start for Mark and Dan's idea, and with so many young gardeners keen to dig in, it can only continue to grow.
Tonight, the tributes continue to pour in for the Buckinghamshire man killed at random in the Cumbrian massacre.
Jamie Clark, who came from Northall near Leighton Buzzard, became one of gunman Derek Bird's 12 victims as he drove along a quiet country road towards the village of Seascale.
His death has devastated his family and fiancée, and their pain is being shared by the local community.
Our correspondent Rhiannon Mills has spent the day in Cumbria, and she joins us now. Rhiannon.
Well, I'm here in Egremont tonight, where shortly a vigil will take place for the 12 victims who were shot dead by Derek Bird on Wednesday. Now, of course, one of those victims is 23-year-old Jamie Clark, originally from Northall in Buckinghamshire. He only moved to Cumbria around 2 years ago. But on Wednesday, he was shot by Derek Bird as he was driving along those quiet country roads, doing his job as an estate agent. Earlier, I visited the nearby seaside community to find out how they're coping with the shock of these apparent random acts of madness. In the shadows of the peaks, flowers have been left where Jamie Clark died. The 23-year-old moved here from Northall in Buckinghamshire to live with his fiancée. Neither of them expected a chance meeting with a stranger to end it all. Jamie worked as an estate agent here in Cumbria. On Wednesday morning, he'd been travelling on this road which leads to Seascale between viewings. But it was here that his paths crossed with Derek Bird. He was shot and killed, one of 12 victims to die that day. Marion Park lives nearby. She heard the gunshots. At first, she thought it was a car crash.
I did hear 2 shots, which I thought was my grandson shooting crows, and I came outside to tell him off. And then I saw all the kerfuffle down the road, and the car was on its side.
She also knew Bird's 2 other victims in Seascale. 9-year-old Jordan Williams saw the taxi driver face to face.
This person on his bike just came up, and then the driver just came, shot his back wheel shot, and then shot his face on the cheek there. And then he just stared me and my mum in the eyes, so then he just drove off.
It was 2 years ago, after studying photography at Dunstable College, that Jamie moved to be with his fiancée Leanne Jarman, who was studying in Carlisle. Today, she described him as her closest friend. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, also visited West Cumbria to pay his own tributes to the victims.
There'll be some parts of this we'll never understand. There were some random acts of killing, and people who would have lost loved ones will ask why it happened to them, why so random, why it's so unfair, it's so cruel, it's so awful what happened here.
With its idyllic landscape, it's easy to see why Jamie Clark and his fiancée moved here for a new life. Now that peace is shattered, it'll take some time before his friends' and family's lives will move on.
Rhiannon, it seems there's still an awful lot of questions to be answered.
There certainly are, David. It's only by visiting this area of West Cumbria that you can really understand how extraordinary these events really are. Take, for example, where Jamie Clark died. It's a very quiet rural road. The only signs of anything that happened a few days ago are some small pieces of police tape and, of course, those flowers. But it has led to lots of questions and lots of people feeling that really these random shootings, anyone could have been targeted by Derek Bird. Also, Marion, who I was speaking to earlier today, she said, why didn't the police act faster? But for many people today, well, it's still about remembering the victims, the service, for example, taking place here. And while Jamie Clark may have only moved here a couple of years ago from Northall in Buckinghamshire, he will still very much be in people's hearts here.
Rhiannon, thanks very much.
There are no problems here with volcanic ash or the staff going on strike, but passengers like me going up with the Blades aerobatic team do of course face another few twists. Miles is my pilot, ex-RAF and former Red Arrow.
Everyone that works here are former RAF fast jet pilots, former Red Arrows, and so we all think in a similar sort of way and produce, hopefully, the world-class display that we do.
I'm petrified, I'm excited, but just wish me luck. I'll see you later. All strapped in and we were off. I think probably now I can admit that actually I'm a little bit scared of flying, but when you're up here and you're seeing this and experiencing something that most people would never get to experience, I think it's worth beating my fear for. Maybe I'd spoken too soon. Oh! I've never seen the world like that before! Oh my god! I hated flying until today, but I'll never look at it the same way again.
So that's pretty cool, isn't it?
With my stomach in one piece, we head back. But Miles and the team do it all again at the Southend Air Show this weekend.
Some synchronised, high-performance gyroscopic aerobatics. It's a real stunning display.
That was the most amazing thing I have ever done. Now, I love my job, but these guys must have the best job in the world, and I think officially they may have cured my fear of flying as well. What else do I do with my bank holiday now to stop that? Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News at Sywell in Northamptonshire.
A Sunday newspaper revealed that Sarah Ferguson had tried to get £500,000 to introduce an undercover journalist to him. Our correspondent Rhiannon Mills was also there, and she joins us now live from the college he visited. So, Rhiannon, how did he react?
His trip today would have been organised weeks ago, but it's those revelations in the Sunday papers which certainly drew more attention to this visit than you would normally see. There were a lot more people hanging around, hanging on Prince Andrew's every word, waiting to find out whether or not he would make any comment about his ex-wife. A couple of journalists did try to put a couple of questions to him, but he flatly refused to say anything. For him today, it was clearly about getting back to business. Prince Andrew arrived in Cambridge this morning to talk business. Instead, the Duke of York faced more personal questions.
How are you today, sir?
The assembled media more interested in his private life. This his first public outing since his ex-wife was caught out by a Sunday newspaper offering access to the Duke to a fake businessman for £500,000.
New Prince Andrew. Yeah. Is that a deal?
Yeah.
Today it was business as usual for the Prince. Data company One Spatial, part of his visit to Cambridgeshire. His role as UK trade envoy is at the centre of this scandal, a role many believe is still vital.
We have the ability on days like today to allow him to understand some of the things that we're doing in the knowledge economy so that he can convey that to, as he's going around the world in his ambassadorial role for trade and industry.
Already on the other side of the world was ex-wife Sarah Ferguson in America, collecting an award for her work with children.
It's about making a difference, and most important thing, I hate grown-ups and I love children. Thank you so much.
At Cambridge Regional College, the Duke was addressing another young audience.
If you have a skill, that skill is usable not only inside the United Kingdom, but worldwide.
Just as interested in what he had to say. The Duke of York knew nothing about his ex-wife's alleged business deals, but the added interest in today's visit has gone to show just how much influence this scandal has had. If you believe any publicity is good publicity, this was a successful day at the office for local businesses, an official opening from royalty, one that didn't cost a penny. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News in Cambridge. Two roads, both in our region and with very different price tags. Here in Cambridge you are clearly going to need your savings. This is Chaucer Road, the most expensive street in our region. Properties here costing on average over £2 million.
But St Osyth Road in Clacton is at the other end of the scale. Here you can bag yourself a bargain. A survey shows houses along this road are among the cheapest in the region.
Hello there, hi, come in. Thank you very much.
Samantha Hayward has lived here for 3.5 years.
It's quite run down at the moment. There's no parking hardly at all. It's a very busy road. The only good thing is it's close to the schools for the little ones.
70 miles away, I spent the morning on Chaucer Road. Since 1880, it's been home to Cambridge professors and the city's wealthiest families. Patrick Sharman moved in 30 years ago, looking for a very big house for his 8 children.
It's near the centre of town. It's a very peaceful area with large houses in fairly large gardens. Absolutely brilliant place to be, yes. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I mean, I don't think we'd ever sell the place because the children would be so outraged if we did.
The survey throws up the huge anomalies in house prices in the Anglia region. Cambridge might have the most expensive at more than £2 million and Clacton the lowest at just £34,000. But it's the same story elsewhere. In neighbouring Suffolk, Ipswich has the most expensive property prices, with houses in Hitcham selling at more than £1.3 million. While in Northampton, you could pick up a property in Crispin Street for just under £40,000. But local estate agents tell me average house prices at St Osyth Road in Clacton are more like £110,000. This one's up for sale for £105,000. But just down the road in Jaywick, you can pick up a house for just £30,000.
Well, St Osyth Road's always been notoriously reasonable pricing because it's sort of your terraced 2-bedroom, 2 reception room houses. Going a couple of miles up the road, you've got Jaywick, which has got sort of a variety of different constructed properties, from timber frame, single brick properties, which you can get at quite reasonable prices, and they start at about 30 to 35,000.
In 1996, Chris Carey sold the first £1 million house in Cambridge. Today, he's selling one of those precious Chaucer Road homes. One client waited 8 years for a house there. For some, money really is no object.
We sold a house for what was the record price in the city in the middle of the recession 2 years ago at £3.5 million. So I think there is still a huge amount of pent-up demand for the most desirable houses in the most desirable areas.
Buying a house is probably the most expensive and important investment that any of us will ever make. With prices beginning to creep up, whether you're spending millions
or if you're spending considerably less than that, just make sure it's somewhere you can call home. Lorna Ramsey, Anglia News, Clacton. And Rhiannon Mills for Anglia News in Cambridge.
You'll find them deep in the Norfolk countryside, a band of very merry men ready to take on any amateur. But lads, I've only got a couple of quid.
Can we teach her anyway? Why not?
Steve Ralph's always wanted to be Robin Hood, but instead of robbing the rich, well, he now trains Hollywood royalty to do stuff like this.
It'll make a fine pin cushion!
Russell Crowe was his latest pupil for the new Robin Hood movie.
I think he makes a very good Robin Hood, and he's actually quite a good archer. And I think it's quite a, if there was such a thing as a film political move, he'll be Robin Hood for the next 10 years, because it seems to go in 10-year cycles. So for the next 10 years, people will think of him as being Robin Hood.
I think the last time I did this was on one of those like school adventure holiday things.
It'll all come back to you.
Yeah, honestly.
As I said, women are much better at this than men. So if you hold the bow in your left hand, like just imagine it's a bicycle. That's it.
Okay. Apparently, Keira Knightley is one of the best that he's taught. Clive Owen and Dame Judi Dench have also taken lessons, although they probably didn't make it look like such hard work. Oh, just hit the tree. But training me is nothing compared to the effort that Steve put into Robin Hood. He made all of the bows and arrows for starters. Keen archers, Willie and Keith, were then called in to help him train around 500 extras to use longbows. And they even got stuck into some of those battle scenes.
A lot of the enjoyment was to work with the extras because they're really enthusiastic. Sometimes they get a little bit too over-involved and you just have to calm them down a little bit. But when you walked amongst them, there was times I actually felt I was on the battlefield.
We shot off the cliffs. It was brilliant. There was like 200 archers shooting arrows off a cliff and volley after volley. I've never seen the like. It was brilliant.
On May the 14th, they'll find out if all their hard work with the new Robin Hood paid off. That's when the film is released. For now, though, they seemed quite happy to just teach me a lesson. Now that is just showing off. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News at Kenning Hall in Norfolk. It's a very different game they're playing in Buckingham this general election. None of the main parties fielding candidates. The reason? It's just not cricket to stand against the Commons Speaker. And at the moment, that's John Bercow. He's been Buckingham's Conservative MP since 1997, traditionally one of the safest Tory seats. But this year, he's being challenged by UKIP candidate Nigel Farage. He's decided to put tradition to the test by standing against the Speaker, he says, in the name of democracy. Now, there's also going to be 9 other independent candidates on those ballot papers, but no candidates from Labour, the Lib Dems or the Conservative Party. It's left voters in Great Brickhill stumped.
A lot of people are confused that the 3 major parties don't appear to be standing, and I don't think people understand why that is.
You do get to vote, it's just the fact that you can't vote for one of the major parties, you're not feeling like you're voting for the government, and that's an issue.
I think it's about time now Parliament looked at a change in this tradition.
This isn't the first time Nigel Farage has caused an upset.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you?
He was fined for that pop at the EU president, so is this just another cheap shot?
I wouldn't call it a cheap shot, but if, like me, they feel they've been lied to by career politicians, they've been promised referendums that haven't been delivered, that they would like to send a message that is very loud and very clear, then I believe I would be that messenger.
Order! Order!
As Speaker, John Bercow is more used to breaking up the squabbles. So it's nice to have a friend like fellow Tory John Redwood to help fight off those unexpected challenges.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll do my best. Thank you. But they're perfectly entitled to stand. It's a reflection of the fact that all 3 parties in Parliament think that I've done a good job and that as Speaker I deserve support, that they are urging people to back me.
In lots of ways, Buckingham is all about tradition. Affluent chocolate box villages,
Unemployment is low, the number of commuters high. Voters here still want their say.
Minimum wage, transport as well. Transport here, I mean, have you seen where I live?
In terms of dental and healthcare, where we're not as supported as people who live in towns.
Problems with regard to burglaries, then there's no doubt about it, the response is very weak at the moment.
But can a former MEP and a politically neutral speaker really make that difference?
Be it the threat of overdevelopment, the threat of the high-speed rail link at vast expense, all pain and no gain for the constituency. On all of these matters, I'm in there, I'm lobbying for local interests, I'm meeting ministers.
No one's talking honestly about the amount we need to cut public spending, and from Parliament what I would do is I would join up with Labour and Conservative MPs and fight for the British people to have a full, free, fair referendum on our future with the EU.
So picking a team in Buckingham will be different, but this is one nail-biting election standoff. Political tradition resting on whether these new players can catch the Speaker out. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News at Great Brickhill in Buckingham. The job is all about speed, so I hadn't expected to be kept waiting.
It's fashionable to be late.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one before. Jason Plato, lovely to meet you. Promised a racing driver. Where are my racing cars then?
Well, I mean, this is it. We obviously just take the stickers off.
But ultimately, just like a normal road car, are they? Or are you going to show me something different?
I'll show you something different.
Okay. Because tinkering away in Wellingborough, you'll find the team from RML. This car is normally about £14,000. Their creation for Jason and the Silverline Chevrolet team closer to £170,000, and that means quite a few modifications.
So here we are, the car's completely stripped of interior compared to the road car, so we're looking to save every gram of weight that's possible. We've got the fire extinguisher on board, air jacks for quick lifting the car, dropping it back down for quick wheel changes.
This is where it really outstrips your road car, isn't it?
It is, yes. I mean, the engine produces twice the power of the standard road car.
But you can't get your hands on one of these, can you?
You can't, no, they're not road registered.
With so much wheel-to-wheel action, most of us couldn't afford those repair bills either. But it's all that drama in cars that you'd maybe spot down the supermarket that attracts so many to British touring cars.
Underneath, that they are racing cars, but, you know, the car is the second most expensive purchase in our lives, and people get passionate about the cars they have. It's great fun. It's aggressive, hard motorsport, and there's heroes and big villains, of which I like to be the latter one.
RML have been winning races for 25 years. They'll be hoping to pick up more silverware at Rockingham this weekend. Well, with all of the crashing and banging that drivers like Jason get up to on the circuit, to be honest, I'm quite happy to stick something a little more sedate today. Go on then, take us to the shops or something.
Shopping.
Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News in Wellingborough.
The council finally agreed to pay compensation to the children affected. Well, Rhiannon Mills is in Corby for us this evening. Rhiannon, what a great relief it must be for all of the families involved.
Jonathan, it certainly is a huge relief. Now, back in the 1980s and 90s, when this former British steel site was being cleared, little did the families that I've been speaking to today expect it to have such a huge impact on their lives. But it left their children with missing limbs, deformed hands, and has seen them fighting an 11-year court battle. Today, they told me that fight is finally over. Look closely at Lewis Waterfield's hands and you can see the legacy of the clean-up of Corby's steelworks. Now 15, he was born with deformed fingers after his mother was exposed to toxic dust.
They had to amputate both my index fingers, and in the process they tried to graft a toe on my right foot and place it onto I think it was my left hand, but that didn't work out, so I was left with 4 toes on 1 foot and basically back where I am. It's nice to know what the outcome is, you know, and that we can finally move on now, and today hopefully marks the end of something, you know, that shouldn't really have happened.
Today, Lewis and 18 other young people won their battle for recognition. Their legal team announcing a settlement for compensation with Corby Borough Council and an apology, bringing relief for Lewis's mum and many others.
thinking, was it something we've done? We went through our medical history, and there's nobody in the family at all like it. We have a daughter who's older, and she was fine. Just wondering the reasons why, really. So I feel happy but numb, and yeah, it's real and it's over.
Corby became a steel-making centre in the 1930s, reaching its production peak in the 60s. In the 1980s, as the industry declined, Corby Borough Council began the demolition of steelworks and reclamation of the land, some of it for new housing. The first cases of so-called Corby Hand emerged in 1999. An investigation found no link. Legal action began in 2001, culminating in last year's High Court ruling. The Borough Council still hasn't accepted liability, but today they admitted making mistakes in the clean-up. In a statement, they said, "We accept that money cannot properly compensate these young people. We sincerely hope that this apology will mean that they can now put their legal battle behind them." Susan McIntyre has been waiting 11 years for this day. Her son Connor was born with just one finger on one of his hands.
Nothing will ever bring Connor a hand, and as far as I'm concerned, the apology means more to me than any money at all.
Their solicitors won't reveal how much this payout is worth. It won't make these young people millionaires or erase their disabilities, but at least the constant court battles will finally disappear.
Rhiannon, this case is hugely significant, isn't it?
Absolutely. The lawyers today were really stressing the significance of it. They've described it as the largest case of child poisoning since the thalidomide case. They've also said it could have huge implications for councils right across the country if they were doing this kind of work in terms of protecting their residents. But you mustn't forget the young people at the centre of this case. One mother today described this as a terrible part of Corby's history and one that should never be forgotten.
Rhiannon, thank you. When she hears you munching.
This is Emma Spooner's magic weapon. A book every mother could do with, especially when it calms not just one baby, but identical triplets.
What does Mummy always say?
Of course, it's not always this quiet. Triple changes, triple feeds and triple cuddles keep Mum and Dad pretty busy.
Chaotic.
Crazy. Lovely as well. Everyone says it gets easier, don't they?
It doesn't get easy. It just changes. It's like now they crave for your attention the whole time.
Yeah, you come into the room and they're all staring up at you. It's absolutely priceless.
We first caught up with the Spooners when they were just 5 weeks old.
Who have you got there, or do you have no idea?
No.
12 months on, just try getting them to sit still. I failed not once.
Oh, we're just losing one now.
Not twice.
Oh, poor Sebastian.
But more than 3 times.
Oh, and I'm being strangled now. Okay, so let me introduce you to them all. This is Alfie, he's apparently the mischievous one. Then you've got Sebastian here, he's the cheeky one. And Zach, he's the sensitive one.
They're also different sizes, but telling them apart can still trip up Mum and Dad.
Sometimes we do get it wrong. I was over at my mum's the other day and I was calling Alfie to get away from the TV unit and he wasn't listening to me. And Mum said, that's because you're calling the wrong baby and it's actually Zach.
Although apparently extra brothers mean better playtimes.
Now we've got more people to play with. Before we just had to play with each other and we used to get in booze, but now we've got the babies to play with. We can play with one at a time.
At least for now there are no squabbles over who blows out the candles. That's up to Mum and Dad, although they say they've already got everything they could possibly wish for. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News at Cockley Clyde in Norfolk. Louise Fox means business when she's in the gym. From pushing paper in an office in Peterborough 3 years ago, she's become one of the best powerlifters in the world.
I had worked for BT for 17 years and it just so happened that at the same time I met these guys that got me into the powerlifting, so then I thought, well, do you know, I'll take a career break. As a youngster I'd always been able to do sort of press-ups and pull-ups and things that probably not all women can do, so I kind of knew I was fairly strong, but I never thought that I would be as good at something as I actually have been, so it has been a bit of a surprise.
And it's really worked out for her. Titles, medals, awards, and now 2 world records at the British Championships. The first was for heaviest deadlift. That was 26 stones. Add to that a squat and bench press, and Louise smashed another record for total weightlift with an incredible 53 stones. That's nearly 7 times her own weight, about the same as 2 baby elephants. And how do the men react to you when you're in the gym lifting these huge weights?
I think when I'm training, the guys probably will just look at you and think you're working out and you're having quite a good workout. I think the most respect you get is at a powerlifting competition when the guys realise that you're lifting 3 times your body weight, and there's not that many guys that can do that themselves. So that's when you get the most sort of cred, really.
So how tall exactly are you?
I'm 5'2½".
Okay, so that means that Louise is actually, well, she's shorter than me and she doesn't weigh as much as me either. But when she can do things like this... Oh, gosh. I don't think I'll be heading to the gym with her anytime soon. All right, you can put me down now. Believe it or not, she's got an even bigger challenge than that coming up in November, the World Championships. But with records and titles already under her belt, that should be a pushover. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News in Peterborough. Red and yellow roses. For over 200 years, a symbol of the Royal Anglians. Today, lining the streets of Wootton Bassett to welcome home 2 of their boys. Lance Corporal Scott Hardy from Chelmsford and Private James Grigg from Stradbroke in Suffolk. They only died in Afghanistan last week, caught in an explosion deep in Taliban territory. Their deaths have hit the regiment hard. The partners of Carly Garner and Danny Khalik served with them and are still in Afghanistan.
Hardy, it was just life and soul of A Company, the block, with the whole camp, everyone knew him.
You just feel straight away, you feel for the girlfriends and the families, and you just, it's the call.
Yeah, it overshadows everything that you feel. Like, you can't even be excited about homecoming now, because it's not the same really, not about everyone there.
But homecoming for Corporal Hardy and Private Grigg was to RAF Lynham, a scene that's become bitterly familiar. In Wootton Bassett, friends and relatives were ready to welcome them back. Corporal Hardy's girlfriend honouring him by wearing his medal. Then the town fell silent, followed by a stream of roses. And finally, applause. Before they then had to say goodbye. Today, people have travelled hundreds of miles to remember Corporal Hardy and Private Grigg. Friends, families and colleagues, all here with a very distinctive thing to join them together. Yellow and red roses, the colours of the regiment. The journey to Wootton Bassett has become part of the grieving process for many military families. Captain Ian Robinson from the Royal Anglians told us that the efforts of the town are really appreciated.
The families that I've met do, in one way or another, all seem to find it a very important part of that healing process, if you like, and in the early stages. They all, to a man and woman, appreciate what the town does, the fact that it's really a focus of recognition for the sacrifice that their son or husband has made.
In the past 6 months, the regiment has lost 5 soldiers in Afghanistan. Some today didn't know Corporal Hardy or Private Grigg. For others, they meant everything. But for everyone here, their courage will never be forgotten. Rhiannon Mills, Anglia News at Wootton Bassett. The cars have been unveiled, the drivers out testing. Now the world of Formula One is once again ready to go racing. It's in Bahrain that first big race of the season is taking place, with new regulations like no refuelling. That should certainly spice things up. But actually, it's been back here in our region that so many of the preparations have been taking place. We now have 4 of the Formula One teams based here: Mercedes, Red Bull, Force India and Lotus. We also have 2 of the big engine manufacturers based here as well. But there's also been some serious work going on track at Silverstone. They've been busy getting ready for the British Grand Prix in the summer. But of course, the teams have a lot to prove before that.